This is the lecture on political corruption, part 3. Here we have, and I've just moved to the next slide. I've got a few visuals here to help us get a little more of a concrete idea of the patterns of corruption around the world. You can see here in this map areas of the world that are perceived to have more corruption. Those are the darker areas, and those that are relatively cleaner, have less corruption, in the yellow. And you can see the patterns to me immediately jump out, which are that much of the world has a high level of corruption. The red areas, that dominates most regions of the world. So if we move from left to right, you've got Central, South America, you've got African countries, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and also Southern Europe to a certain extent. Italy, you see there, Spain, Greece have our orange-red. Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union, Russia, etc. The Asian, South Asia, like India, East Asia, like China. You see down there other Asian countries like Indonesia are reddish colors. So that's the rule. That's the dominant pattern around the world. As you see, rife corruption across the planet. Your worst areas that you see tend to, looks like, where you got your darkest colors, perhaps northeastern Africa and some Middle Eastern countries have your darkest colors there, meaning the most intense corruption. Where you see a clear pattern of where there's relatively less corruption, that's in your yellow areas. So there we're talking Western Europe, not Southern Europe, but Western and Northwestern Europe, the United States, Canada, and Australia. And you can see Japan over there as well has a lighter color. So the simple, I guess, dividing line here is much of the world is corrupt, and where you see an exception to this are northwestern European countries. And you'll see later one of the findings that comes out of the research is that what these countries have in common is that they have a Protestant heritage, a Protestant history background. These are Protestant-dominated countries that tend to have the least corruption, and that's a solid research finding. So it's not just English-speaking countries like you see there, Great Britain, or the United States, Canada, Australia, but also Western European countries like Scandinavia, like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, etc. So it's not just English. The English language, the English-speaking world, it has relatively low levels of corruption, but so does Western, Northwestern Europe in general, and again, Protestant background. So here you see a graph that looks at democracy and corruption. So it's along the x-axis, you see how much voice the people have. That's a way of talking about the level of democracy, and also how accountable the government is to the people. If the government's acting poorly, how easy it is for us to kick them out, right? Are they held accountable? Do they ever get punished? Do they go to prison for illegal behavior? So you can see that the countries that have the most democracy and the highest levels of accountability, that's going to be your upper right. Again, there we see northwestern European countries, Denmark, Norway, Germany. You see Japan there as an eastern country that scores high on democracy. And now, so the y-axis, I didn't mention that, is the control of corruption. So it's not higher means more corruption. Higher means more control of corruption. Actually, it's a weird way of saying low corruption, right? So Japan, Denmark, Norway, etc., low levels of corruption, good control of it. And you can see on the lower left are the countries that have the least democracy and also that have the least control of corruption, the biggest problem with corruption. Syria, China, Iraq are listed there as examples. So Asia, Eastern Asia, Middle East, South Asia, etc. And again, you can see a fairly tight pattern there, so the correlation is quite high. You see there, it says R squared, if you've taken statistics, is 0.63. That indicates that there's a strong connection between democracy and controlling corruption. Here we see another slide here, figure 3, another correlation, a scatter plot as they call it. Along the x-axis is how much regulatory quality there is in a country from low to high, and the y-axis again is control of corruption. So by regulatory quality, what we mean by that is basically how effective is your policing of various activities, economic activities, business activities, the exchange of money, or whatever, that is it policed to monitor for violations, for criminality, for illegality? Do you have a good, effective policing system? And here we're not talking about street crime, because this is corruption, which is a different level. It's a different area, right? Involving businesses and organizations and government, etc. So if you need to have strong regulation in your society if you want to keep corruption down. It's just it's common sense in my mind that if you want to prevent crime, you have to have police. You have to have someone regulating and watching people, and when they break the law, you say, no, you can't do that. You're going to get punished for it. And if you don't have much of that going on, you get more corruption. So again, you see the same players here. New Zealand, upper right-hand corner. New Zealand is high on regulatory quality. Singapore, there's another East Asian city that's so you do get these sort of successful, wealthy Asian countries, East Asian countries like Japan, like Singapore, that are similar to Western European countries that have low levels of corruption. Then if you look at the bottom left, you again see Libya there, you see Sudan, so you're seeing Middle Eastern countries, North African countries, etc. So it's the same picture, and you'll see these patterns pop up again and again. The story is really quite simple here when we're looking all around the world. Okay, another graph, figure 4, correlation between economic freedom and corruption. Now, what they mean by economic freedom is how much competition do you have in your society? So if you're in a society where you have 10 different department stores that you can go choose from to buy your whatever you want to buy, let's say supermarkets, you want to go buy your groceries. If you got 10 different choices and they're all competing with each other, they tend to want to deliver the best product for the best prices, because if they don't, they go out of business. And so the idea here is that competition is good. If you only have one grocery store, a monopoly in town, and that's the only place you can get your groceries, well, they can abuse you, they can cheat you, they can be involved in corrupt activities that end up driving up your prices and driving down the quality of the food or the products that you buy. And guess what? You can't do anything about it because you don't have choices of other stores to go to. You're forced to go to that store and deal with whatever abuses you get from that store or whatever dirty dealings they're involved in that end up hurting you as a customer. So this idea is that competition is good. And that's what they mean by economic freedom, is how much competition among businesses and organizations of all sorts. Doesn't have to be businesses. Let me throw out another example. It could be churches. If there's only one church in town and you're a religious person, you want to go attend and you don't have choices, well, they don't necessarily have to treat you very well. And but if you've got 10 and you can go to the one that makes you the happiest, where they take care of you and they provide the best religious services in your mind. And so choice like that in competition tends to improve behavior. And so, and it's not just businesses, it's all different institutions. This is one problem with government, is that government tends to be monopolistic. We've got one federal government in the United States. There's only one Washington, D.C. And so there you see a lack of competition. And so if you don't like how you get treated by the IRS when it comes to time to pay taxes, well, tough. It's not like you can go to somebody else to deal with your tax returns and get a better deal or better treatment, better services by them. There's only one game in town, and so you have to live with whatever they give you, right? So that's a problem inherent in any government agency if it's monopolistic, right? Which government, of course, tends to be the only game in town, and there's no competition there. Anyway, so back to this point, you see more economic freedom is correlated highly with corruption perceptions